Okay, the Rembrandt Heist. This is a book I finished a little bit earlier this year by Amore. One that I really enjoyed and wanted to do a quick review here on the channel because it's one that I hope other people will read as well, especially for people that are into the kind of true crime genre, although this fits into a few different things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So what's the book about? It's the topic of the book, if you will, is Miles Connor. He is a well-known thief in the Boston area back in, I think, the 70s. Well, in several decades, but the 70s is kind of when he became famous. So this was a while ago now. I mean, you're talking about 50 years ago now. But Miles Connor himself is a bit of a character. He grows up as from what the book says, a very accomplished musician. He has a really good friend who's also part of this story that we'll talk about here in a little bit, who is kind of the guy that organizes the band and helps put things together for Miles. But like I said earlier, Miles himself is a thief. And what is he a thief of? Artwork. And that's what makes this book, the topic of the book, interesting is that, you know, there's criminals out there. We kind of all draw distinctions between criminals and we put lines in between them. I think there's a line for violent criminals. I think there's like even another line, kind of a special place we reserve people who do things to children. But I do think that they're on the lesser side of that scale is kind of these Robin Hood thieves, if you will. And that's where I put someone like a Miles Connor. He's an art thief, and he tends to steal famous paintings from museums or people that otherwise wouldn't necessarily miss them. And what I mean by that is that he'll steal like a painting from the back room of a museum because it should be displayed. And he appreciates the artwork. He's not someone, he takes very good care of it, all that stuff. Anyway, not to sympathize with him a ton, more on the book itself. The book, the author becomes friends with Miles Connor later in life. You know, this is many years later after he's not committing his life of crime anymore because he's never told his story. And Anthony Amore is a writer of books like this topic, specifically artwork. And so he ends up befriending Miles Connor and gets Miles to tell him this story. And without giving too much detail, the climax of this book, if you will, is Miles gets himself into all kinds of trouble, stealing artwork. And it gets to a point where he's talking to someone I can't remember, his dad refers him to like either another police chief or someone in law enforcement. And he's like, how am I going to get myself out of this jam, basically? And the guy tells him, there's no way you're getting out of this one short of a Rembrandt painting. And to most people, that would be an offhand remark as like, oh yeah, okay, so basically it's impossible. But to Miles, this hatches a plan in his head to where he's thinking, okay, while out on bail, what if I were to hatch the perfect plan to steal a Rembrandt painting and use that painting as leverage to get me out of this other stuff that I did? Because they won't know that I'm the one who stole the Rembrandt. So wild, right? Like crazy plan, and not to give away too much, but the book, obviously there's a story written about it. He's able to figure this out and sort of pull it off, and that's what makes it interesting and a cool story. As far as for what the book delivers, I mean, I thought it's a cool mixture of first-hand account, sort of like memoir with a story. And those tend to be books that I find to be the easiest. It's almost like you go from first person to third person at the same, throughout different chapters. And I like that. It makes the book more readable to me. And I thought that helped kind of speed the book along for something that is fairly an old topic and an old person. So normally, if you were to just tell me, hey, art thief in the 70s, I don't know what my interest level would be. But when I kind of have the first person view of some of this stuff, it adds a little bit more intrigue to it. There's other cool elements to this book as well. Miles' best friend, Al Dottoli, he lived a straight life in the music industry, ends up being pretty famous in the music industry. He's Miles' best friend, and he plays an interesting role in this book in that also he befriends the author of this book, but he kind of is Miles' guardian angel in a lot of ways. And he ends up having to be a part of some of Miles' crazy plans, although he himself never commits any crimes. And it makes for an interesting dichotomy. And also it makes me think back to a time of loyalty, friendship. You hear about this stuff a lot. If you've seen like the movie The Town, for example, kind of that East Coast, Upper East Coast area, I'll say the Northeast, where it's like friends for life type of a thing. I think despite the fact that Miles is a thief and a criminal, there is just something cool about that him and Al are best friends no matter what happens. And they'll never leave each other. They'll never betray each other. Even in the industry that Miles is in, he will never betray his friends. And there's just something about that that's interesting to read about. And I especially think when you think of today, and you think about things like in white collar work, like in business, people get betrayed all the time. And so, I don't know, something that I think about with books like this. And then, what I was mentioning earlier, there's just an element of this sort of Robin Hood crimes that I think it just all, what's the line, right? Like should these paintings that otherwise, that's a Rembrandt right there. Should that be millions of dollars worth of work? And to who is it really worth that for? It's just except for some rich person who's going to take it, buy it, put it in their house that no one's ever going to see. It's just an interesting topic to me. And so I found this book to be fascinating. Super cool story. I do think that true crime people will like it, but it also is kind of another niche in the sense of that, like, there's the Northeast kind of friendship, loyalty, like the movie The Town aspect to this book that I think will attract other readers to it. So anyway, I thought the Rembrandt Heist is a great book. Certainly enjoyable. It's got that element to it, like I was saying earlier, where it's not just the third person story. You get Miles and Al's take on a lot of these things throughout. And, there's that dichotomy, and the author finds himself in this same position where he ends up becoming friends with a criminal and an art thief. And it makes for like I was saying, a dichotomy of how do you square these two things? Miles was sort of living a life on his own terms in total freedom, never actually wanting to hurt anyone, although he does hurt someone, which they tell the story about in the book. But there's an element to that I think we all almost admire in a way. And the author finds himself in this same position where he's like, man, this guy kind of lived his life on his own terms. Was he really that bad of a person? I don't know. Who decides that type of a thing? And so, cool book. I hope you guys are able to pick it up and read it. Like I said, it's The Rembrandt Heist by Anthony Amore. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you tuning in.